Welcome back to my channel. This week I'm bringing you another Cook with G. But before I get started, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up so that way we can keep on growing. Now today we are cooking from 100% Real, written by Sam Talbot. So we've got some recipes in store. Now let's cook. All right, so our first recipe is a savory porridge with baby kale, wild mushrooms, and hazelnuts. So I was very interested about this because I've seen people eating like savory oats a lot lately, and I was like, I want to give it a go. I've made it maybe once before, like multiple years ago, but I never followed a recipe for it. So I was excited when I saw this because I felt like all of the ingredients are things that I like, and I love a little crunch, and I don't typically gravitate towards hazelnuts. So I was just like, all right, let's give it a try. Mushrooms, kale, nuts, even a little maple syrup in there, even though it's savory. So figured we'd try it out. Okay, so we're gonna add some vegetable stock, and then the recipe calls for almond milk, but I'm using soy milk. It's totally transferable, but as the rules go with Cook with G, if I don't like something in here and I swapped an ingredient, it is my fault. But I think that this will be an okay swap. It's just what I had on hand. So I'm gonna go ahead and add our vegetable stock. So we're using 2 3/4 of a cup. And the oats that we're using for this are steel cut oats, which do take longer to cook. They're obviously not rolled oats or quick cooking oats. They're a little tougher, a little bit of even a different texture, but hopefully it makes more of a creamy consistency in the end. Okay, so now it just says to bring it to a boil over medium-high heat. And then these are steel cut oats. So you can see that the cut of them is just very different than typical rolled oats, which this would be the difference between them. So we've got our typical rolled oats here, and then these are our steel cut oats. So this is what the recipe calls for, which is also why we use so much liquid, because it requires more for them to break down, and it's a longer cooking process. Versus this, which says half a cup of oats in just 1 cup of water. We're only using 3/4 a cup of these steel cut oats, but we used 3 3/4 cups of water. So obviously it takes longer, so more evaporates over time, but these guys need a lot of liquid versus these, not so much. So while that boils, I'm gonna start on some of our ingredients. So we're going to put our pan in the back up, and then we're gonna add about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And we're gonna toss in a half a cup of chopped shallots, some thyme, and a little bit of salt. So that's gonna go in. So I'm gonna add in 3/4 cup of our steel cut oats. And then we can add more vegetable stock or milk as needed. All right, our shallot mixture is now cooked down and browned, and it says to add 1 teaspoon of maple syrup, and then we're gonna cook it for 2 more minutes. Woo. Okay, so now that that's cooked for just another couple more minutes, we are to actually take the shallots off of the heat. So I'm just gonna move them to a bowl, because we're gonna use this pan again for our next set of ingredients. Okay, so now we're gonna add some more olive oil back into the pan, and then we're gonna add our mushrooms. So they said to just get a mix of wild mushrooms, so I found a literal mix of wild mushrooms. So I'm gonna just put those in. It's got oyster mushrooms, portobello, shiitake, and I think that's it. Maybe there's some other kinds that I'm forgetting, but going straight into the pan, and we want to increase the heat to medium-high. Okay, so now that the mushrooms have wilted down, we can go ahead and add our baby kale that we're also going to cook down. It says to do about 2 cups tightly packed, and this bag has about 4 cups, so I'm going to do a little bit over half. So we just want to cook this until it wilts down. It doesn't say to season it. All right, our spinach is wilted, our mushrooms are cooked, our shallots and thyme have been cooked down, and our oats just finished. So let's add everything to our bowl. So as you can see, yeah, whenever I cook oats, I don't know if anyone else's pot looks like this. It just gets an absolute mess on the inside. But we're gonna add in the shallots, kale, and mushrooms. And then we're also adding 1/4 cup of chopped hazelnuts. I'm gonna mix this all together. Okay, all that's left to do, let's get a facial apparently. All that's left to do is plate it and eat. So All right, let's try it. It looks really good, so I have high hopes. I really like this. I was nervous that the oats would just like not like logically compute for me because I'm so used to eating them sweet. But because it's steel cut oats and because, as you can see, like they just get cooked down so much and they absorb so much flavor from the vegetable stock and from the milk and things like that, that it really doesn't make you think that it's oats. And I think also because there are so many ingredients with like the kale and the mushrooms and the thyme and like all of the extra bits, it helps you kind of disguise the idea that oats are normally eaten sweet, at least in my world. So I don't know, I might be a savory oats convert because this is a great way to get some extra vegetables in first thing in the morning, some healthy fats from the hazelnuts, and it's delicious. So on to our next recipe. So our next recipe is a quinoa chia energy bar. So this is what we're aiming for. Now, there is one ingredient in this recipe that I could not find, which is quinoa flakes. Apparently you can make quinoa into like breakfast type of cereal, and that is what a quinoa flake is, according to the internet, but also according to the internet, you can just substitute oats. So that's what I'm doing, but I did search long and hard for quinoa flakes and I could not find them. So I know I've said this once already in this video, but the rule goes, if the recipe is something I don't enjoy and I've swapped an ingredient, it is my fault. So wish me luck, but I think we'll be okay. So we're gonna start with preheating our oven to 350. And I'm adding 2/3 cup of apple juice into our pan. So we just want to get that cooking, and then we're gonna add a bunch of dates. So this is just 8 dates. I just chopped them up and removed the pit, is what the instructions said. So once this heats up, we're gonna then put the dates into the apple juice and kind of let it sit on the side. But I thought this was interesting because a lot of times if I'm using dates in something like a bar or something where I need them kind of to be more soft and melty, I'll just soak them in hot water, but I never thought about soaking them in apple juice, and I feel like it'll add an extra sweetness. So I'm curious to see how, if like this apple juice comes through or if it just kind of like adds a sweeter element. Okay, so now that the apple juice is simmering, I'm gonna add in the dates. So you just let them kind of get covered, and then it says to just turn off the heat and let them sit for about 10 minutes to soften. Okay, so now we're gonna turn our bigger pan onto just a medium heat, and we can add in our oats, but what could be our quinoa flakes, and then a cup of chopped almonds. I think it's like about half a cup of chopped hazelnuts. It says you're just supposed to cook this for about 2 to 3 minutes until it gets fragrant. Okay, so our oats and nuts and coconut oil are all toasted. So I'm just gonna turn the heat off, and it says just to kind of let it cool slightly. So we can just move that off to the side. And then I'm going to take the mixture with the dates, and we're gonna go food process that and start making the bars and have it all kind of come together. So let's do it. All right, so we're gonna put in the apple juice and the dates into a food processor. And now we are also adding in some vanilla extract, cinnamon, I love cinnamon. And now I'm gonna add in the honey, right? Okay, now let's put our lid on. Okay, so now we're gonna add this mixture into our bowl. So we've got that. Now let's add in our chia seeds. So the chia seeds expand in liquid. So it says if we wait about 10 minutes, this should thicken up. You can actually already see it starting to thicken. Now we're gonna add our oats and nut mixture into the bowl. Okay, aside from the oat and nut mixture, we also have a bunch of chopped dried fruit. So it's apricots and dried cherries that are gonna go in. And we're just stirring this up until it's all mixed together. Okay, so now that it's well combined, we can move it over. We're gonna add it to our baking tray. So it says to just spoon it in and press to have an even layer. And it did say to line it with parchment paper and make sure that some of it sits out on the edge, so that way I think it's easier to pull out. I think this would also work as like a granola, like a kind of chunky granola. Get this all smashed down. And now it goes in the oven. So let's bake. All right. Yeah, so it's not really a bar. I maybe the oats really were a bad substitute, but I'm gonna go off of flavor. And also, you're supposed to wait for an hour for it to cool, so maybe it needs to solidify more. I waited very close to an hour and it's still pretty warm. So I'm gonna go in for flavor and assume that the reason it's crumbly is my fault. So let's try it. You know, I'm not really into this that much, but it does kind of just taste like a trail mix. So I guess if I was in the mood for like a very like nutty and dried fruit based trail mix, then this could be a good option. But for the amount of work that I put into it, I feel like I would just gravitate towards a trail mix. I'm gonna let it sit and longer until it's like fully cooled and like hope that then it'll be able to be cut into bars, and then maybe it would be a better experience. But I feel as though if it is still crumbly, what I would do is I would spread it all out into a baking pan and put it back into the oven and actually try and just make granola out of it, because this with milk I would really like. But on its own, I am definitely not as like vibing with it as much as I wanted. However, I was hoping that it would be kind of this like very good granola bar, and as you can see, it's a blob, which is probably just my fault. So right now I wouldn't make this again, but hopefully I'm able to reinvent the leftovers if they don't solidify. But the first recipe was still great, and this is good if you do like those fruity, nutty trail mixes and that's something that you're looking for. Maybe try with quinoa flakes if you actually want to make them into bars, assuming that that is the reason that I got it so crumbly by accident. But that's it. And if you don't know, I actually always try to link all of the cookbooks that I use in my Cook with G series down below in my Amazon storefront. And my Amazon storefront also has some of my favorite kitchen gadgets or travel essentials or things like that. And if you shop from that page or any of my affiliate links, then I will get a small commission, which is one way to support my channel. However, you just making it this far is as much support as I could ever ask for. So thank you again so much for watching, and if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up so that way we can keep on growing, and I will be sure to catch you next time. Bye!